All characters in this story are over 18. My uncle, a celebrated engineer, died right after I graduated junior high. My aunt, Beatrice and I were heartbroken. That entire summer, Aunt Beatrice would arrive home from her work at the library and sob every night in the living room. I coped by losing myself in books and weightlifting. Her cries were unbearable to hear, but I couldn't bring myself to abandon her. When the school year started, things slowly began to normalize. Aunt Beatrice and I shared the household tasks, adjusting to our altered life. The most peculiar shift was Aunt Beatrice's aversion to sleeping in their master bedroom. Our house had 3 bedrooms, and I used the biggest one as my personal gym. A yoga mat was spread out, a weight bench and free weights lined one wall, and a rowing machine sat in the corner. This setup needed some rearranging. Aunt Beatrice sold their queen-sized bed and bought a small sofa, which we put in my adapted exercise room. She also asked to move her dressing table out of the master bedroom. We shifted the rowing machine into the newly vacant space. We briefly discussed me moving into the master bedroom, but the professionally installed wall-mounted climbing frame made it impossible. My gaming computer and its meticulously hidden cables were also set up in my current room. So, the master bedroom became a storage room, and Aunt Beatrice and I cohabitated in my former gym. We made a pact to respect each other's things and maintain order. Due to our conflicting schedules, we rarely interacted. I'd frequently get home from school, ready to rush off to my coding club, only to find Aunt Beatrice still at work. By the time I returned from my club, she was usually getting ready for sleep. We did occasionally have film nights on the weekends, but those were short-lived. This arrangement lasted 3 years. I decided against finishing traditional high school, instead choosing a vocational course after my second year. Aunt Beatrice carried on with her work at the library. One afternoon, I skipped coding club and exercised at home. Aunt Beatrice came home, changed, and went to the kitchen to make supper. After my workout, I took a shower. When I came out, Aunt Beatrice was in the room, checking herself out in the mirror. She was wearing new pajamas. "Dinner's almost ready. Give it a few minutes and we can eat in 15, she said, turning to look at her new sleepwear. I had seen her do this frequently with new clothing. "Should I offer congratulations on the new purchase?" I asked. "It was a present," she replied instantly, seemingly expecting the question. Unperturbed, I put on my headphones and concentrated on my computer. A few days later, it happened again. The rate of these presents felt strange. One evening, as she modeled yet another gift, her unusual clumsiness and slightly slurred words revealed she was tipsy. I was on the sofa, reading a graphic novel, glancing at her now and then. "What's your opinion?" she asked, striking a pose. "Do you have a secret admirer showering you with these? Am I right?" I asked, looking directly at her. "Spot on. It seems I've still got it, and younger gentlemen appreciate my charms," she responded, settling next to me on the sofa. "Younger?" I questioned. "He's a good 10 years younger, but it doesn't seem to bother him. He's completely infatuated." There was no point in probing her about this new romance. Her joy was evident. It didn't surprise me. I knew she was capable of moving on. Life continues, after all. My only concern was the distinct aroma of wine. I turned away, wishing her good night, not wanting to continue the discussion. One night, I took a job unloading delivery vans for extra cash. I called Aunt Beatrice to tell her I'd be late. Approaching home, I noticed the kitchen light was on, assuming she was waiting up. Inside, I heard a disturbance in the kitchen, like plates smashing. I rushed in, still in my work boots, and stopped dead in my tracks. A strange man was being intimate with my aunt. Something inside me broke. I surged forward, grabbing him by his shirt, and physically ejected him from the kitchen, out of the house, and onto the front porch. After slamming the door shut, I stood for several minutes, eyes closed, hearing the man's angry shouts from outside. He didn't attempt to come back in. I took off my boots and returned to the kitchen. Aunt Beatrice was incredibly drunk. I carried her to the sofa and then cleaned up the mess. The next day, avoiding any conversation, I went back to unload vans. That evening, we had a furious argument. "Do you have any idea what you did?" she yelled. "That was Mr. Davies. He owns businesses across the city." "I don't care who he is," I snapped back. "Why did you assume he cared about me?" she demanded. "You don't treat people you care about like that," I muttered, pulling the blanket over my head. 2 days later, as I was walking through the local park, I heard someone shouting. It was Mr. Davies with a black eye, accompanied by 2 other men. "Hey, punk, we need to have a word," he sneered, feeling brave with his back up. "Not cool." 3-on-1, a familiar voice interjected. It was a close family acquaintance, someone I'd known since childhood, walking towards us. "You should have stayed out of this, Pops," Davies taunted. I knew our friend's presence was a stroke of luck. I felt confident we could handle them. I stepped forward, throwing the first punch, still hoping for a peaceful resolution. I explained the situation to our friend. "Things have gotten messy for you, haven't they? Don't fret. If you need anything, let me know. We'll sort it out," he reassured me, straightening his jacket. My primary worry was Aunt Beatrice. The image of her in the kitchen wouldn't leave my mind. Walking home, I wondered how she could have gotten involved with such a horrible person. Did she genuinely enjoy that kind of lifestyle? Another unpleasant surprise awaited me. Entering the house, I found Aunt Beatrice passed out in the hallway, reeking of vodka. I changed my clothes and then knelt beside her. Realizing she was unconscious, I carried her to the sofa. As I laid her down, I was careful not to crease her dress. She was breathing lightly, lost in a drunken stupor. In a moment of impulsiveness, I took advantage of the situation, and we had sex. The next morning, Aunt Beatrice fumbled to switch off her alarm. I had classes. Surprisingly, she wasn't getting ready for work. After my alarm went off, I showered. When I came out, she was in the kitchen. We ate breakfast without speaking. "Did you put me to bed last night?" she finally asked, her eyes fixed on the wall. She avoided eye contact the entire morning, deep in thought. I tried to mislead her, saying she was already asleep when I got home, but she disregarded my attempt. Still looking blankly ahead, she continued, "He sacked me yesterday. He summoned me to his office, then, with a smirk, told me to visit the payroll department. How could I have been so naive? I guess you didn't hit him without reason." I waited for her anger about the previous night, but her focus was elsewhere. "That's why I drank so much. I don't even recall coming home, let alone getting into bed." Relief flooded over me. She didn't remember anything. I finished my coffee, thanked her, and got ready for school. My final lecture was canceled, and I returned home early to find Aunt Beatrice on the sofa, surrounded by a pile of pajamas. Her head was tilted back, eyes shut, tears rolling down her cheeks. "Aunt Beatrice, what's the matter? Are you upset about all of this?" I asked, going over to her. The scent of alcohol was back. She opened her eyes, reached for me, and sobbed harder. "It's not the clothes. Just after I got rid of them, my friend called with a job offer," she wept. "That's fantastic," I exclaimed. "When I first met your uncle, I had a date. I was embarrassed to wear my old underwear, so I borrowed some from a friend. Now, I'm in the same position. I'll have to face a new team tomorrow in my old underwear." She smiled through her tears. Without a second thought, I grabbed the money I'd earned unloading vans and left. I decided to buy her new pajamas myself. An hour later, I came back presenting her with the package. She'd cleared away the discarded clothes and was looking at herself in the mirror. She took the package with a smile. "You got me new sleepwear?" she asked, taken aback. She peeked inside, gasping at the set. Her gaze moved between me and the garment, a large smile spreading across her face. I felt proud of my purchase. "I didn't want you to feel awkward. I wanted you to feel your best. You deserve lovely things," I said, my voice heavy with emotion. "You're the sweetest, most considerate man I know," she interrupted, recognizing my sincerity. The vodka on her breath brought back the previous night. I persisted. "Please, don't drink like that anymore." "I didn't have much today, just a little for my headache after yesterday," she deflected, looking down. "I mean generally, I hate seeing you that way," I said, my voice shaking slightly. "I love you, Daniel," she interjected. "I love you too, Aunt Beatrice," I replied. "You probably want to see how I look in these," she said, opening the package and taking a step back. "Daniel, can you help me with this clasp? It's a bit fiddly," she asked. I fastened the simple clasp, feeling self-conscious. Sensing my discomfort, she continued. "That date with your uncle was kind of similar. Do you have much experience with women?" she inquired. "Some," I mumbled, trying to create space between us. She stopped me. "I've been careless recently. I enjoyed Mr. Davies' company, even though he was a creep. He exploited me. I'm ashamed I brought him home. I miss having a man in my life. Do you understand?" I nodded, uncertain where she was heading with this. "You've been such a man throughout all this. You've been respectful, protective, and understanding of my slip-ups. I'm appreciative, and I want to thank you in a womanly way. Can you do what your uncle would have done?" Her meaning was unmistakable. I wanted to tell her she didn't need to thank me, but my mind was foggy. We went to the bedroom and had sex. "Thank you, Daniel. I won't do anything you don't like again. I promise to stop drinking." "A sensible amount on special occasions is okay," I smiled. "Let's forget the past and make a fresh start," I said, meeting her eyes. She nodded in agreement. "Daniel, can you pass me a towel?" I fetched a towel from her shelf, getting one for myself, too. The bathroom door was open. She was waiting on the bath mat. When I came out, she was on the sofa, wearing a dressing gown. "I'll wear my old underwear tomorrow. Let's save these for a special occasion. I'll buy you some new clothes. I know your measurements now," she grinned, getting up from the couch. "You're so considerate." After that, we lived like roommates, talking openly about our lives. She continued to ask for my opinion on her clothes. I often asked her advice before going on dates. There were instances where she'd forget her towel, and I'd bring it to her, our eyes meeting without any lingering awkwardness. Eventually, Aunt Beatrice moved back into the master bedroom. We redecorated it with fresh wallpaper and stylish drapes. My vocational course was coming to an end. Aunt Beatrice was excelling at her new job, coming home in high spirits. One day, she arrived with flowers. I knew she had a new boyfriend. One evening, she initiated a conversation. "Daniel, I have something important to tell you," she said anxiously. I could see her nervousness and wanted to put her at ease. "Are you trying to tell me you've met someone new?" I asked, holding her gaze. "Yes. How did you guess? He proposed," she exclaimed, her face flushing. "It wasn't that hard. I figured it out when the flowers started showing up," I smiled. She relaxed, the color receding from her cheeks. "What do you think?" she asked, relieved. "I want you to be happy, Aunt Beatrice," I replied sincerely. "I'm overjoyed for you. You're a wonderful woman, and you deserve to be cherished." "He's not young, a bit older than me, actually. We've been seeing each other for 6 months, she confided, her eyes glowing with happiness, knowing I approved. "I have some news too, Aunt Beatrice," I said, shifting the topic. "I received my military service papers." Her expression changed, tears welling up. They finally overflowed. "Don't cry, Aunt Beatrice. It's all part of life. All young men serve. I'm no exception. Concentrate on your upcoming nuptials. Everything happens for a reason," I reassured her. "Can we go to the enlistment office together to see you off?" she asked, her eyes glistening. "Of course. We can introduce you to my friend too," I replied. Time seemed to fly by after that. The day arrived. I stood amongst the other recruits, nervously waiting for Aunt Beatrice. She appeared from the crowd, arm in arm with a tall, sophisticated-looking man. I liked him instantly. As they approached, she introduced us. He extended his hand. "It's a pleasure to meet you, young man. I wish you a safe tour of duty and a speedy return." "Thank you. The pleasure's all mine. I'm glad to see Aunt Beatrice so well looked after." "Don't you worry, Daniel. We're happy," he assured me. The order came for us to embark. Aunt Beatrice started to weep. As they walked away, I wished them well, hoping she had finally found happiness.